guys, and welcome back to the channel. For today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series Transformers The Last Knight Deluxe Class Crosshairs, one of my favourite Autobots from some of those live action Michael Bay movies. In particular would be Transformers 4. This guy was an Autobot that had a trench coat made out of a Corvette, had dual SMGs and had these wicked looking goggles, and not to forget that the actual voice actor in the movie was by far one of the coolest, and the design of this guy has always been one that personally has appealed to me the most. I've always been a massive fan of the Corvette Stingray. I loved it when we saw it first time around with Sideswipe, and maybe even liked it a little better when we saw it again in 2014 here with Crosshairs. Now this figure is specifically based on how he appeared in Transformers 5, but basically it's his Transformers 4 appearance as well, especially in regards to the details of the robot mode. And as you guys can see, I do have him posed out here in that really sick looking position when he does actually take down some of those Decepticon protoforms in the Transformers 4 movie. Time to lay some hate. Now I think where this figure in particular shines would be in the finer details, so as we just bring him in here for a closer look, that is an amazing head sculpt. Probably the best looking head sculpt that we've seen for a Crosshairs yet. I just think the metallic silver paint looks awesome. We do get loads of mechanical sculpting in detail, and the goggles just look fantastic. I really love the way they've come out. Now as we take him here off the display base, just so we can get a closer look here at a side perspective, that just looks so nicely done. Now for some weird reason, the entire back of the head has been cast out of transparent plastic, and considering the neck is on a ball joint, that is definitely something I'd watch out for. So don't try and actually rip the head backwards, or you may crack that ball joint. But here at the back we do actually get some pretty nice detail of what I believe is supposed to resemble where the parachute would shoot out, or maybe it's a jetpack. Either way, it's definitely been sculpted rather nicely, and it's not something that we tend to see much of on Studio Series Deluxe figures. The backs usually just tend to be plagued with a lot of kibble. But as we flip our attention round here to the front, I think all of the mechanical detail that we have here for the torso looks fantastic, even as we move these trench coat pieces out to the side, fully painted in a really nice gunmetal, and the chest and shoulder design is just such a marked improvement when in comparison to what we saw from that original Transformers 5 figure. I think this looks awesome. You can see some of the wiring, the mechanical detail for the shoulders looks so cool, and we've actually got a pretty decent amount of paint here for the forearm, so I do like how these almost dial sections are fully sculpted as well as painted, and the hands also look pretty sweet. Now granted, we do get some hollow cavities here for the inside, but that's just due to the nature of the transformation, and considering he's a deluxe class, I guess I can't really complain much about that. And then we come down here to the trench coat itself. Now this is a big design trait of this character, and overall I don't think this looks bad at all. It's always going to be something that's rather difficult to convey in an action figure, and for a $25 release, yeah, it's actually not that bad. I really like these front pieces. These will actually become the front fenders of the alt mode, so I thought that was a pretty sweet integration of actually giving us some of the vehicle mode components in this trench coat. And I do like some of the paint detail that we have here for the top. One thing which is worth mentioning is that these are articulated, although the paint does have a tendency to become scuffed very easily. So if you're not the biggest fan of that, I wouldn't recommend hinging these around all that much. And as we actually take a look here at the detail for the thighs, I think that all looks cool, as so do the shins. But as soon as you kick the leg out, I'm not gonna lie, that is a pretty ugly looking leg design. I'm not too sure why they couldn't have found a way to maybe straighten this hinge out and filled out the back of the leg just a bit more. But once you do get the trench coat kind of surrounding it, it's nowhere near as noticeable. And as you guys can see here, the foot design looks great, as so does the placement here of the wheels. And as we flip our attention here to the back, we have more of the trench coat, which actually does look pretty sweet. Now as I bring this section out, you can just see how much is made up of that trench coat. If you were to take this entire assembly off, the figure would be pretty flat and not great looking, so I wouldn't recommend actually puncturing this pin joint out. What I would say, however, is that this section is on a ball joint, so if you're not the biggest fan of just how much kibble he has, you can simply just pop this section here clean off, and that does look a lot better. I'm not gonna lie, it does look way better. The figure looks a lot cleaner, and this is actually a pretty big portion of the vehicle mode as well, so it's never really gonna look the best no matter how you try and display him. Now he does come with two weapons. As you guys can see, we do get some dual SMGs which have been sculpted really nicely, and I think he looks so cool whilst wielding these. If you didn't want them actually in the hands, you can come around here to the back, and these are the ports that we'll use for vehicle mode anyhow. There is a slot here that will peg into this tab, so we can just snap these SMGs here into place, and overall not looking that bad at all. Now it's very easy to actually attach the backpack on if you do remove it. So we simply do just snap this here into place. And turning to articulation, this is definitely where you're going to see some issues with this guy, considering that he does just have so much going on. Where this trench coat goes, some things do have a tendency to just bump in and become a little bit annoying. So here for the head, it is on a ball joint, although we get a very limited range here at the head, which I think is unfortunate. It would have been superb had this been able to look up a little higher, but it can tilt side to side as well as rotate left to right. Not the full 360 due to the way it's been designed. If you were to force this, you'd probably strip off all of the paint here for the chin, so that is a shame. Due to the way the shoulders have been designed, these are slightly restricted as well, so they can hinge back and forth as well as forwards and backwards, so I guess that's okay, but they will bump in to some of the trench coat detail. We do get a rotation here at the bicep, 90-degree bend here at the elbow, and I do really miss the double joint that we saw on the original 2017 figure. Sadly, no form of wrist rotation nor waist rotation, but the trench coat pieces here can hinge out of the way to allow the legs to kick forwards that far, which I thought was pretty sick. You can also hinge this panel as well upwards, so you can still get a pretty dynamic range of motion out of that. The hips can kick out to the sides, forwards, and backwards to that far. We do get a double joint here at the knee due to transformation, so that can bend slightly past 90, and then we also do get a super stiff thigh rotation here, and the feet are on ball joints, so they can pivot forwards and backwards slightly, as well as can rock side to side to a terrific degree, mainly due to transformation, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then here for the trench coat, as I said before, these pieces can hinge up and down, these pieces can flare out to the sides, and if you really wanted to, you could hinge this all the way out, although considering it's pretty hefty, it will more than likely spring back into place. So overall, articulation is decent. I would have loved to have seen a waist rotation, wrist rotation, and definitely a better range here at the head, but for what he is, I think he's pretty nicely done, and as I mentioned beforehand, it really is the sharper details such as the head sculpt and the trench coat and the torso, which I think really shines when in comparison to that original figure. Now as we take a look here at some comparisons, we have our new Studio Series version on the left and the original version on the right, and undeniably they've definitely streamlined the design down so much. This version looks way more accurate, especially in the head sculpt and the torso, although I wouldn't say that this is a straight write-off, as this is actually rather fun and enjoyable to pose around, whereas this one definitely does have an almost fiddly aspect to it, just considering there is way more going on with that trench coat. And as we come around here to the back, call me crazy, but I do actually think the kibble management is a little nicer done here on the original 2017 version when in comparison to our new release. Overall, I think detail-wise the new version is better, but I do just wish they maybe could have found a way to have perhaps reduced the kibble here on the back some way. I know it has to go somewhere, so I guess it just comes down to the nature of the design, but undeniably the design is way cooler on this guy, especially here for the shoulders and that head sculpt. Now turning to some quick rapid fire comparisons, here we have the Studio Series Lambo Hot Rod, Transformers 5 The Last Night Drift, Transformers 4 Age of Extinction Helicopter Drift, Transformers 3 Dark of the Moon Bumblebee, Transformers 5 The Last Night Bumblebee, Transformers 5 Voyager Class Hound, Voyager Class Optimus Prime, and just very quickly some additional comparisons for Studio Series Hot Rod. Here we have them alongside that Deluxe Class TF5 Bumblebee and the Mercedes Transformers 5 Drift. Now turning to transformation here for Crosshairs, something which I don't believe we ever actually see in either Transformers 4 and 5. There is a lot that goes into this guy, so to start things off, you'll want to take the hands and just fold those in to the hollow cavities. You'll also want to make sure that the dual SMGs are pegged into the sides of the trench coat just to make things a little easier later on during transformation. We can then separate the backpack here from the main body. It is held in via this tiny tab which does peg into this slot, so just angle that there out to the side. We can then take the foot, rotate this around, and this will slide into a tiny groove on the inside of the leg. Do the same here for this side. What we can then do is take this double joint for the knee, and this is where I can kind of understand the strange angle for the back of the leg, as this will come up and over and will basically sit on top of the thigh, rather flushly as well. So do the same here for this side, so just slide that up and over. We can then take this section here, bring this down just like this, and then pull those ball joints forward so that you're left with something which at the moment looks along the lines of this. What you'll then want to do is take the shoulders, rotate these sections here up, ensure that the biceps are fully straightened out just like that, and now what you're going to want to do is take the backpack and the head and shift this section here slightly forwards just like that. Okay, now what we can do is take this assembly here, fold this out, extend these joints here all the way forward, just like so. You'll then want to take these panels and unfold those around and do the same here for this side. What we can then do is take the arms, rotate these inwards, and do the same here for this side, and just leave them like that for now. Okie dokie, we can then bring these around and do the same here for this side. That should then allow for enough clearance for us to rotate this entire assembly up and over, and basically what's going to happen here is these sections of the trench coat are going to come up and over and slide over the top here of these transparent pegs. So as mentioned beforehand, I thought it was really cool how pieces of the trench coat do actually become a part of the vehicle mode. That was a really good reuse of some of those parts. Now as we come here to the underside, as you guys can see, we do get a tab which is made out of the inside of the foot that is going to peg into this transparent peg. So just snap that in there. Do the same here for this side, give that there a good squeeze. What we can then do is snap that section into place and all of this just like so, and repeat the same process. We can then come around here to the back, take this section, fold this down, and these two tabs will slide into these two slots. So just snap those in there, and here on the inside of the arm there is a tab that will peg here into this slot. So snap that in there, snap this one in there, and with all that being said, here we have Crosshairs fully transformed up into his Corvette 2017 Stingray, and much like Hot Rod, this is a fantastic looking alt mode. I'd actually go as far as saying it's one of the coolest vehicle modes that we've seen for a Studio Series Deluxe so far, as despite any of the qualms that I may have had with the robot mode design, for the most part the alt mode has gone completely unhindered, and upon first glance you'd actually think that this guy couldn't transform. Now as we take a look here at the details, I mean, come on, what a beautiful looking vehicle. As I mentioned previously, the Corvette Stingray has always held a special place in my heart. I've always thought it was by far one of the coolest vehicles that Michael Bay brought into the live action movies, and it's no exception here with this 2017 version. Now one thing which is worth mentioning is that this guy is supposed to have a rear spoiler. Sadly mine didn't come with one, so that's definitely something worth watching out for, but other than that, the attention to detail, especially here for the front of the vehicle, just looks incredible, and I'd definitely say one of the geek out moments from the transformation would be the way the trench coat does seamlessly become and integrate into the front of the vehicle to become the fenders. That is just such a sweet piece of engineering. I really like how that's come out. I think the side of the vehicle looks awesome, unlike the original 2014 version. Both sides are in fact painted with those really sick looking black stripes. I think the wheel detail looks awesome. These are actually pinned on than as opposed to mushroom pegs, which as you guys know is my preferred choice. We've even got the tiny minute detail of a sculpted and painted Autobot logo, very tiny but definitely very apparent. I thought that was cool. If I was to be critical, I would have loved for the windscreen to have been cast out of a slightly darker plastic, much like we saw with the original 2017 version, but overall definitely a very nice looking car. And as we come around here to the back, you can see that Corvette logo, the tail lights, the license plate. I just think overall he looks so nicely done, and he can roll very smoothly here along the ground as you would expect. Now in terms of a comparison, here we have the Studio Series version alongside the original 2017 release, and overall this was still a very nicely sculpted figure, although I'd say one of the biggest improvements that we're seeing with this new version is the color deco. It's way more accurate to the actual vehicle used in the 2017 movie when in comparison to this almost toxic green that we saw with that 2017 figure. Now as we take a look at them here from a side perspective, I much prefer the black details that we have here up front. I think the wheels look nicer on this guy. If I were to be critical, I do prefer the glossy, almost sparkly plastic that we have here for the windscreen than as opposed to just kind of this see-through plastic, but that really is the only saving grace here for the original version. I think overall the newer one is definitely a lot cooler looking. Here he is alongside the 2009 Corvette Stingray, that of course being deluxe class sideswipe, just so you guys can see how these two scale next to one another. Here he is alongside the Transformers 3 Dark the Moon Bumblebee, and overall I think the scale appears to be pretty much spot on to what you would expect from the movie. Here we have him alongside his wave mate, that being the Lamborghini Hot Rod, and overall yet again I think these guys look so cool paired alongside one another. And here for a few rapid fire comparisons, we have Crosshairs compared alongside the Transformers 5 Voyager class Optimus Prime, Deluxe class Bumblebee, and the Studio Series / Transformers 5 Deluxe class Mercedes Drift. And so, some final thoughts for the Transformers The Last Knight Deluxe class Crosshairs. Overall, I think this is a pretty decent release. Is it a massive upgrade when in comparison to the original version that we saw for 2014 and 2017? Probably not. It definitely is an upgrade. I think the details are massively improved when in comparison to some of those earlier figures, but considering the character design in itself is just so difficult to translate into an action figure, especially a $25 one, I just think the design is cursed. It's very difficult to actually get that Corvette to turn into a trench coat, much like we saw in the movie, and with what the designers had to work with, I think overall they did a good job. It is clunky, I will be honest and say the actual trench coat can get on your nerves, especially just during general posing, but it probably is the best Crosshairs that we've ever seen officially released, and we'll likely see for the foreseeable future unless we actually get a masterpiece, which I think would be near enough impossible. I do like the details of the head. I think the dual SMGs look cool. The transformation is way better than the original figure. I think the detail, the paintwork for the Alt mode looks fantastic. That is definitely where I think this figure in particular shines, but I would have loved had they actually cast the windscreen out of a smoky plastic so that we couldn't have seen any of the interior robot mode kibble, especially the goggles just sticking out at the back. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Is this a figure you guys plan on adding to the collection? And as always, I thank you all so much for watching. Until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.